There are those who revere you as an enlightened spiritual master. Yet, I've often heard you vehemently reject this label. Could you explain why it causes you so much discomfort to be considered a guru?
Jai Prabhuji, hello. We are at our third class regarding the topic of religion, and we will review today the answer of Prabhuji to this question. Why does it cause you discomfort to be considered a guru? And just as I was on my way to give this class just a few minutes ago, I had a chance to meet Prabhuji, come across him. He was in his morning walk, and I was just walking in our beautiful ashram toward the place where I record. And I had a chance to accompany Prabhuji for a short walk. And Prabhuji, is always, and as it is evident in this article, in his interaction with us, he does not like to lecture or to preach, but he usually will ask questions and develop a dialogue in which he listens, and there is some interchange. So he asked me how am I doing and what I am going to do, and I expressed that I'm on my way to record a class. So he asked me what about it, and I said that it is about this question: why does it cause you so much discomfort to be considered a guru? And that there are some who accept you as an enlightened, realized beings, while others see it differently. And the answer that Prabhuji gave me in this short walk is exactly, in fact, what we are going to find in this article, although it was written years ago, and probably Prabhuji did not speak from memories, but from the same view that he still has. But it helped me to realize that, in fact, there are two aspects in this article that we are going to meet. One aspect is Prabhuji's feeling or attitude regarding how he is considered. And the other aspect is the individuals who choose to see him as a guru. And Prabhuji replied to him about both aspects, and also both of them will be described in this article again. So, in relation to his position, Prabhuji said that it is of no concern to him how others perceive him, whether it is glorification or defamation. This is others' experiences, and he is busy in his experience. He's situated in his experience. And the other point that Prabhuji shared with me is regarding the individuals who choose to see themselves as disciples and to follow some guru or some religious path or some path in general. And he connected it to the topic that we met when we studied the article in relation to the authority and the freedom, where Prabhuji explains, and he also shared it in this walk just now, that every individual is always free, is always the ultimate authority on his or her life, as we meet in Jean-Paul Sartre's view. Out of our ultimate freedom, we can choose to see someone as a guru and to follow him. But this position of a guru that we give him in our own lives does not come from him, never, but it always comes from the disciple, from whoever chooses to give an authority to someone else. Again, whether it is a book, it can be to some religion, it can be to some philosophy, it can be to some path in life, it can be to any other individual, etc. We have no way to avoid the fact that we are the decision makers in our lives. And out of this fact, again, we have complete freedom to follow a specific individual and to choose to study from him or from her as much as we can, to benefit from their association as much as we can, and possibly to create favorable conditions for this interaction to occur this interaction of master-disciple, this transmission where that is allowed through a dialogue with another individual, that we create in it favorable conditions, so as much as wisdom will flow to us. This is in our hands. And again, these two aspects are going to be conveyed in the article that we are reading today. It's a short article. Prabhuji again answers this question. And what we see in this article is in fact Prabhuji's own words. And this is why it is so important and precious. We can hear about someone else, but if we want to really study and understand, if we're really curious about a position of a specific individual, whether in this context or in any other context, can be political context, can be personal context, we hear things about another individual. The best way for us to really understand, to really evaluate, to really get to a proper ground for our own examination regarding this individual is to listen to him, is to see him, is to hear what he says. So here we have the opportunity to hear from Prabhuji directly. Why does he speak? How does he see himself? How does he perceive his position? And we can study it very carefully. And in my eyes, this position is a good representation to all the individuals that we mentioned, that in them the religious phenomenon occurred. When we spoke about this topic of religion, we spoke about the fact that there is the genuine religion, the authentic religion, and the institutionalized religion, which was created by minds that try to understand, that try to imitate, that try to consolidate this message that sprang from individuals. And I believe that in Prabhuji's contemplation, reflection in these words, we get a look, a view, or a window into these individuals and their reason for sharing. Out of what these human beings decided to answer when we asked them questions. Out of what they decided to put their wisdom in writing and share it with other human beings. I believe that if we speak about individuals again, that in them occurred what we said, the genuine religion, we will find very similar intention to what we see here in Prabhuji's words. In Prabhuji's words, we will find again the distinction and the fact that he has no intention to influence others, to convince others, to preach to others, and to serve others in any way. But he simply shares. And I think that this is also what we find again in all the original messages of the religions. We find individuals who simply shared, who simply expressed. And the more other human beings allowed interaction, allowed a dialogue, they would also guide them, teach them, or give them specific individual indications in relation to their particular situation. As for example, we can find in the interaction between Krishna and Arjuna that we like to bring here in these classes. We find a master and a disciple. Arjuna allowed the proper conditions for Krishna's wisdom to flow into him. In other words, he created the favorable conditions so Krishna will desire to answer, to guide, to reply, to instruct Arjuna based on his wisdom Krishna shared. As we remember in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna did not share because Arjuna was not open. Arjuna was preaching to the master or to his friend, however we want to call it. But whenever the conditions were favorable for Krishna to speak, when there was an expressed clear desire of Arjuna to hear Krishna's wisdom, Krishna shared. And this is what we see happens again and happened in these interactions between realized beings and individuals who gathered around them, who decided to be disciples, who decided to try and absorb as much as they could, to study as much as they could, to understand as much as they could, to associate, to allow this transmission of heart to heart that Prabhuji speaks about to occur, then this dialogue flourished. And we in many cases receive beautiful evidences and testimonies and wisdom based on these interactions. Throughout history, human beings have worshipped saints and prophets. They have placed them on a pedestal, claiming that awakening is not within reach of ordinary people. Those who would consider me an enlightened master will think it is impossible for them to achieve the heights of consciousness that I describe. They will erroneously attribute special abilities to me that they believe they lack. But in fact, I am an ordinary, simple, and common human. Like everybody else, I have had successes and made mistakes in my life. I am just a curious being who investigates life and himself, one who lives in the adventure of exploring existence and questions everything. So Prabhuji starts to answer this question. What is the problem with calling him a guru, or with attributing the position of a guru? And he explains to us that once we relate to a different individual as an enlightened being, as a divine being maybe, as a saint, as a special being, what we do in such an approach is to put him in a pedestal, to create separation between him or her and us, and perceive their position as something that is not achievable for us. And in this we block our access to our potential as human beings, which is what Prabhuji and all realized beings tell us is our potential. Their realization is, according to their words, the fulfillment of human life, of our human life, not of other individuals. And it is very important for Prabhuji, as we see in this opening, and also we see it in more words that he shares, to allow a simple, open dialogue. A dialogue is enabled between two individuals, two human beings. And Prabhuji stresses here the point that he is a simple human being. Prabhuji does not say, I am not enlightened. But he says that this title, an enlightened, a guru, can create artificial relationship with him rather than a genuine one, an alive one, in which we honestly inquire, honestly interact, and honestly observe what we find appropriate for us. But what Prabhuji tells us here, the dialogue is very significant, and for a dialogue to have the favorable conditions, you need to understand in a way that I am a human being. I am just like you. I make mistakes. I have achievements like any other human being. And I'm continuously questioning, inquiring, and aspiring to experience life. And reflecting on these words of Prabhuji, I think that we can recognize two attitudes that we egos might have that are helpful in creating obstacles on our spiritual journey in relation to our perception of the guru, the master, the realized being. One is that we will place him or her on a pedestal, which means in a position that is not achievable for us and that we will never reach. Different than us. He's made of other material. We have specific circumstances. This approach, which is very common, is against what all saints and sages tell us. They tell us our potential as human beings is divine. This experience, this realization is the fulfillment, again, of human life, which means it's relevant to each and every human, regardless of any circumstances or specific situation. The other approach that I think is problematic is that we ridicule this experience or these individuals. We reject, we ignore, we criticize, etc. And both approaches keep us safe, keep us away from the influence that we can get from association with them, which is favorable for our elevation, for our awakening. Either if we imagine them to be some gods or some divine creatures that have nothing to do with our reality, or if we think that they are wrong or that they are charlatan, both keep us very safe and away from their words, from their wisdom, from their example, from their inspiration. So Prabhuji says here in this word, one important reason for which I do not like this title is it because it can block, in many cases, an open dialogue and an open recognition of the fact that my experience, my realization, my heights, Prabhuji presents it as heights, are not something particular, but are within reach for all of us human beings. And another point that I want to make in this context is that I think that we mistakenly think that there is a contradiction between seeing an individual as a human being like us and seeing him as a realized being or as a master. In the same way that we think that there is a contradiction between our approach to him as a human being and our approach to him as a spiritual master. But in my eyes, and I think we can understand it from this article, not only there is no contradiction, but these two aspects of the master are one and the same. The master is a human being like us. And at the same time, he is a human being that we might be very interested in him because of his experience, because of his realization, because of his wisdom. We want to get from him and associate with him, not because he stopped to be a human being, but because this human being has something that we are appreciating and aspiring to as human beings. Again, as happened with Arjuna and Krishna. Krishna did not demand for Arjuna to see him as a god or as divine or as a realized being. The opposite. Krishna told Arjuna, I share with you this wisdom because you are my friend. And in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he told him, please do what you find appropriate for you to do. I only shared my wisdom, but you are free to act as you wish. Arjuna saw Krishna as divine from his point of view at a specific point when he was exposed to Krishna's existence, we can say, to the heights in which Krishna were. It was Arjuna's choice. But what allowed the transmission is a human interaction. Krishna and Arjuna were cousins, were friends. Krishna did not burden Arjuna more than Arjuna wanted. When Arjuna did not want to hear Krishna, Krishna only smiled as a human being. And when Arjuna was desperate and helpless and begged for help, begged for direction, for instructions, Krishna instructed him. As we would expect, any human being who is expertises in something and another individual comes and asks for help. As two individuals, we would probably assist. If someone approaches us in an appropriate manner, respectful, kind, especially if he's desperate, it will be natural to share, to answer, to help. And these two levels of interactions, the fact that it's an interaction between two human beings, individuals. And the fact that we recognize here the master-disciple relationship on which we spoke in length in the first chapter is not contradictory, but it's one and the same, and it completes each other in a way. When we approach the master in an appropriate way, in a respectful way, in a kind way, we will get more wisdom. But this is also expected of a friend. And the approach to the master, which is explained in the Bhagavad Gita in Krishna's words as approach of service, of inquiry. This is what we are recommended to if we want to get wisdom from a different individual who we recognize as a qualified guide. This master-disciple relationship that we are creating will create an intimate friendship. The result will be that we will be more and more friends, more and more intimate friends. We don't stop to be friends when we advance in the master-disciple relationship, and we don't minimize the master-disciple relationship if we are friendly. And in the following words, Prabhuji will speak more about this aspect of friendship, that he is favoring to have friends rather than followers. And this connects us to the topic of the religion versus the institutionalized religion. Preachers give us messages that we ought, in a way, to follow, but they do not listen to what we feel and what we think. And these messages do not allow us any open dialogue. They are already complete. They are already concluded. Masters, on the other way, and we can see it again in Prabhuji's words here, create this dialogue between us and their words, whether physically or not physically. Create an open conversation that is leaving in our experience a lot of space for different directions, for an individual path, and not a defined and ready-made specific path that we must follow. Besides that, I am simply afraid of losing friends. If you consider me a person like any other, conversation and interchange are possible. We can undertake the adventure of investigating and exploring existence together. We can meet for coffee to talk about the subject that we are passionate about and evaluate the path that the giants of the spirit have laid out for us. But as soon as you think I am an enlightened, you accept my words without question, and there is no longer any room for inquiry or friendship. I become the one who knows, and you become the ignoramus submerged in darkness. From the moment you wear a rosary with my picture, our dialogues become monologues. My opinions are absolute and irrefutable, and my talks are considered lessons. It will be the end of the get-together. You will just repeat my words without thinking. But it is not my intention to do as professional preachers and religious promoters have done for generations. My job is simply to inspire others in their own search. So we see here the aspect of friendship in Prabhuji's words. And again, in my eyes, I think it is representation of what we can recognize in all the genuine spiritual masters. They are our friends. And the reason why they talked with us is because they recognize us as friends and they were friendly with us. And this is different than the motivations of the religious preachers who simply give us messages and would like us to follow. And they are less busy with us as individuals. There is no interaction. We don't get their presence, their individuality, and they don't get our individuality. Both are not relevant to the interchange with the messages of the institutionalized religion. What is relevant is the religion itself, is the laws, is the rules, is the regulations, is the scriptures that we follow, but not the process, not the transmission, and not what occurs. And in the case of the authentic religious phenomenon, as I think is reflected here in Prabhuji's word, this friendship is of utmost significance. And we see that Prabhuji tells us the reason that he does not like us to call him a guru or to relate to him as a unique being that we place on a pedestal again is because he does not want to lose friends. He wants friends. The masters are not less human than us, but they are more human than us. And they like the human interaction, the open interaction. And in this included friendship, the interaction with other human beings. They are open to any other human beings for a respectful and open interaction, conversation. Prabhuji says if we are friends, we can enjoy together, we can investigate together, we can study words of other great beings who walked on this planet, we can meet for coffee. This can be so beautiful, so enriching, not only for what we see as disciple or follower, but also for the one who speaks. Both are enjoying, both are benefiting of this interchange, of this relationship. And once we call someone a guru and in this interpret that he is different than us, distant than us, unreachable, then we block this intimacy. And this intimacy is not only beneficial and enjoyable for us possibly, but also for the master. This interchange, in one of the articles of Prabhuji that we read, Prabhuji said that the master is seeking an appropriate disciple. He's ready to give and he's seeking a recipient that will want this secret. This love story is enjoyable to both individuals. And I think again, we can see how the friendship is of no contradiction to the master-disciple relationship that we recognize with respect, with some distance, with inquiry, with service. We support the master. All these elements that we spoke about in regard to the master-disciple relationship are not different than a relationship between two friends, but in fact they are one and the same. We are creating a relationship in which, again, the favorable conditions for the wisdom to flow are created. And we can imagine that if we were not friendly with these genuine religious beings, we would not likely would get their wisdom, their interaction with us, their words. If we were unkind, hostile, arrogant, etc., this interaction would not be possible, not between friends and not between master and disciple. We sometimes call the master that he is our ever well-wisher. And this is another aspect of, or another expression of the fact that the master is our friend, because in fact he is caring for our ultimate good more than any other relationship that we can have in this lifetime. Because he does not care only about our temporary happiness, fulfillment, joy, but for our ultimate liberation, for our ultimate experience of our real nature, which will address all kind of suffering that we experience in its roots. It means the individual who wants the very best for us is an individual who is established in this state which is transcendental to the egoic phenomenon, as he sees us and our good transcendental to the egoic phenomenon, what other human beings cannot see, because they are like us in this egoic phenomenon. So they can be kind to us as egos, but they cannot want for us or lead us to our ultimate good, which is transcendental to the egoic phenomenon. And this can happen with individuals that are themselves tapping into this existence. There are those who revere you as an enlightened spiritual master. I am not a guru, but I cannot forbid others to consider themselves my disciples. Just as I decide whether to be a master or not, others can also choose to be disciples if they wish. I do not have the right to approve or reject the opinions of others about my humble self. Everyone has the freedom to think what they want and reach their own conclusions. So beautifully we see that not only, as we previously said, it is only in our hands to choose if to be disciples, how much to be disciples, when to be disciples, etc. But even the Guru himself cannot interfere with our decision or change our decision. We are so much free that we have complete freedom to turn someone into our Guru if we wish, and to follow him to the best of our ability. A disciple is a position of an ultimate independence and freedom. If we choose to make someone our Guru, no matter what he does, we will study from it. We will learn from it. No matter what he does, we can do our best to respect him. We can do our best to support him. We can do our best to never disturb. These are all expressions of our disciple attitude. The Guru cannot interfere with our freedom to behave to him in a certain way. And a disciple is never dependent on the Guru's actions and is never limited to a specific way in which the Guru approaches. Because the nature of this relationship, or of this position of being a disciple, means that we accept this individual as our guide no matter what he does. We will turn whatever he does. We will turn whatever he doesn't do. We will turn the way he reacts to us and the way he does not react to us into our lessons. This is our choice, an ultimate choice with which even he or she cannot interfere. We are completely free. In Hinduism, we hear about the story about Ekalavya that expresses this principle very beautifully. Ekalavya wanted to master the military art, and he wanted to learn it from Dronacharya. And he approached him and asked him to guide him, to teach him. But Dronacharya refused. He did not accept him as a disciple. Ekalavya decided to still make of him his guru and benefit from his wisdom as much as he could. And he went back to the forest and created a statue of Dronacharya and started to worship this statue and offer obeisances, and simultaneously developed his skills in archery and became more and more advanced, more and more skillful, until he reached to such a level that he was equal or better than Arjuna, Drona's best archer disciple. And so it happened that the Pandavas went into the forest and saw the amazing skills of Ekalavya. He shot 7 arrows into a dog that was barking and managed to, without harming the dog, stop him from barking. But this was a very, very sophisticated execution, and they recognized the fact that there is some archer somewhere who is better than Arjuna, who is equal to Arjuna, and they did not know who was this personality and from whom did he learn, how come. And then when they asked Ekalavya, how did you do this? He said, my guru is Dronacharya. I got everything I know from Dronacharya. And they were puzzled, of course, how come. They knew that Dronacharya did not guide Ekalavya. And then they saw the statue that Ekalavya made in the forest. And when Drona himself went to witness it, he was shocked himself, because this was all from Ekalavya's initiative, and it has nothing to do with the decision or the will of Dronacharya. Dronacharya did not want to guide Ekalavya, but Ekalavya still wanted to get from him as much as he could. And he managed, by his approach as being a disciple, he managed to get and to advance in all these skills. When Drona saw this, and because of the fact that Dronacharya promised Arjuna that no one is going to defeat him in archery, he asked of Ekalavya to give him his right thumb as a donation, as a guru dakshina. So he told Ekalavya, if you see yourself as my disciple, you are ought to give me a donation if I request. And my request of you is to give me your right thumb, which will of course will prevent Ekalavya from being a skillful archer as he was, and allow Arjuna to be the best archer. And Ekalavya did it without hesitation. Now this story has two interpretations. One is that Ekalavya is an example of a great personality who manifests qualities of a disciple, of humility, of persistence, etc. Not only because of the past that he invested in order to get such a skillful archer, but also of course because he gave his right thumb to his guru once it was requested of him. And there is another interpretation that in fact says that Ekalavya was not an ideal disciple, but he wanted to get out of Drona what Drona did not want to give, and take advantage of his ability to create the conditions for this wisdom to flow into him. And by this, he was in fact arrogant. Even the fact that he gave the right thumb shows that in fact he was arrogant, because he still had to be a perfect disciple, but not really intimately relate with Drona's will, which is what disciple wants. Disciple wants really to understand the master, really to serve the master, not to get from the master. So both views are interesting, and in any case, both reveal to us the immense freedom that we have as individuals, and the fact that the position of a disciple is always a result of his or her own decision, intention, actions, choice, freedom. It does not come from the master. It cannot come from the master, because the master cannot turn us disciples. The master can share wisdom, can share recommendation, he can share about his experience. But for our attitude to be born, for our transformation, we must be choosing, we must be present in this transformation and paving our path in a way that will allow this transformation to occur in us and this attitude to be born in us. From first-hand experience, a disciple attitude, I don't think it's something that we can master. I think that it's an everlasting process, and we can attempt to perfect more and more. And the more we will manage to create this approach, we will be able to get more from the master's wisdom. And the more we will manage to create these conditions, this transmission, this approach in us, more friendship will flourish between us and our master. We will not see him less as a human being, but even see more his human qualifications and the beauty in these human qualifications. Because again, as we said, the divine expressions that are in such individuals are not contradictory to their human expressions. They are one and the same. They express through their very human moments, their very human interactions. And this is for us an inspiration and a testimony that this divine experience can happen in human beings like us. There are those who consider me an enlightened master, while others think I am a charlatan. Although I respect both opinions, they are in fact no concern of mine. Please consider me a simple guy who is focused on putting words together and painting them. I prefer to be counted among artists, a musician who composes melodies and shares what happens to him with whoever is interested. Jai Prabhuji.